Bonjour and welcome to IndigiCast, the podcast where me and my mates chill, hang out, and just talk about anything Indigenous related. This week's episode is episode 3, and today's guest is Laura Horton. Hello, Laura.
Bonjour. I can be here.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. The snow
That's
just
great.
and
No, yeah, for real.
yeah, and I just had my second COVID shot.
Sweet. That's
Yeah.
very cool.
Mhm.
So let's start with a little introduction from yourself.
Okay, bonjour nandwe maganaduk, ganui koyendago, minawa nijo ganebe kendago, makwando dem, Manitou Boatagoon and Donji, Talida Dene Nishnabe Koyendao, Gabe Medea Kwe, Minwendano Maki. Really happy to be here today. So I carry 2 Anishinaabe names that I've been gifted, and I have lived most of my life in Manitou Rapids, just down the road from Seth, and known since birth. That's
Yeah.
exciting reality to watch this little one come into the world, seeing the mother carrying the babe, and then watching that one grow, hanging out with my granddaughter all of the year of grade 8, and then through high school to graduation and prom. That was very
Yep.
exciting. Yeah. So
You're right. I was indeed your granddaughter's prom date. It was fun. It was
you
great.
were. Oh my God, gorgeous pictures. Yeah. Yeah. So good life. And yeah, so I've been an educator all my life. And that from when I was young, it was like, what are you going to do? And I come from a family with teachers in it, and it always seemed to be that's what I'm going to be as a teacher, and have studied to do so, and have had, oh my God, an amazing life. So I'm at the fourth hill now. Just turned 66 in February, and I had retired already, and went back to work just because it's like COVID. It's okay.
Yeah, it's a way to keep busy
Pretty
too,
lonely.
right?
Yeah, my partner passed a few years ago, so being on your own is a whole different realm. And
hmm
one of my elders was telling us, us young old people, if you still have energy, get back out there and share what you have. And if you can do it, do more, because we need to have so much done. So I went back to
That makes sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I got to be a culture coordinator for one of our communities in Treaty 3, and I'm absolutely loving the ability to work with individuals, work on the land. This past week, respecting the COVID numbers and restrictions that we have,
Yeah.
been outside and working on tanning a deer hide, and that we're still at the very early stages of scraping, but um, the one that I have out now is actually my oldest granddaughter's first kill, and that
Wow.
I know.
That's really cool.
Okay, guys, those of you out in listening land, you might hear our train go by. Our community is
Yeah,
the CN rail, and the houses do shake sometimes.
just a little bit. Let's start off with we're gonna go a little bit. No, we'll go from the beginning. So you mentioned before the podcast or before we started this recording that you grew up in kind of Toronto area. That's where you went to school and high school, right?
I'm born in Atikokan, so I was born in Treaty 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So born in Atikokan, but went to school in Toronto
Yeah,
for
when
the
the
early
mine
years.
shut down. Yeah.
Okay, so what was that like? In the previous podcast episode, I talked with Tashi a bit about her experiences growing up in
Mhm.
London, Ontario, right?
Oh, okay.
So what was it like for you?
Well, it's interesting. So I was born in Atikokan, and we lived on the edge of Atikokan, which has a population of maybe 1,000, and that we're right on the American-Canadian border. And in our backyard was the bush. I mean, there was nothing else. It wasn't like we were in the center of town. There was a big rock that we played on, and if we walked back 20 feet, we were already hitting the tree line, and we could go as far as we wanted without ever coming upon anybody. And we were outside all the time, even though it was from 0 to 6 that we lived there. And a lot of freedom. I come from a family of 8 kids. 6 of us were at home when I was born. Through that age, just my dad had 4 from a first wife, and then 4 more from a second wife. And that, so anyways, there's a lot of freedom, a lot of small town stuff. And then the mine, Steep Rock Iron Mine, shut down, and we moved to Toronto, and Dad bought himself a trucking business. And we moved into an industrial area where it was all factories around our house. And that's so, again, there was no people, so that was all right. And then I know.
That's always a plus, isn't it?
There was. And the really cool thing, I remember I was like 6 years old and we moved to Toronto, and I still think Atikokan was the center of the universe. And I believed that until I was quite old.
Yeah.
But when we got to the neighborhood where our new home would be, when we turned the corner, and there was a carnival at the big, huge park up the block. So there was a Ferris wheel and those whirly things. It was August, and it was like, oh my God, I'm like moving to an exciting place. And then it left. But it was okay. School was just a few blocks away, and we lived in Mimico, which is now part of Etobicoke, right on Lake Ontario, and our world was probably a 1 mile, 5 mile circumference, a mile down to the, not even that big, a kilometer maybe, to the water, Lake Ontario. And we really didn't go any further than that. So as much as it is called Toronto, it was Mimico. That was it. I went to Mimico Elementary School, Mimico High School, small little place. When my mother was removed from Northwest Territories and her dad brought the kids down to south, they went to Edmonton first, and then her mom passed away at Dene in Anishinaabe. They ended up in Toronto, and they ended up in Mimico. So there were people in the area who knew my family for generations. So that was kind of cool. But we were also the only Indigenous family in the community. We were rock stars. We really were. It wasn't like we were bad. We were like, we were so special, And, the teachers would ask, in elementary, your projects and stuff, and that, well, give us your family lineage. Where do you come from? And that, you go home and you find out that your grandfather on your mother's side comes from Wales, and your grandfather on your dad's side came from Ireland, and that your maternal grandmother came from Northwest Territories, and your paternal grandmother came from Ontario or from Canada. And then the teacher says, no, go home and find out where they came from. And you go home and you find out they came from the territories, and they came like around the Arctic Circle, and they came from Nipissing area. And and then the teacher goes, no, they had to have come from somewhere. And it's like, they did. They came from here. And it was from here. Are you serious? You actually came from here? And in that way, it was really an honor, because not everybody knew our family, but
yeah,
even I remember in grade 8, grade 7 and 8, we always had a play at the school, a big production for the end of the year. And when I got to grade 8, my teachers brought in the play Ice Pool, and it was all about this Anishinaabe Kwe. And there was a chief in the play, and that's about as far as I remember. But we need to have moccasins and all the rest of it. They brought that in for our family. My little brother got to be the chief, and I was like the main one. And we had to go figure out how to make moccasins, and it was that kind of privilege specialization. It wasn't so much a put down. We weren't treated badly. My mom's brother was known as chief, which of course is derogatory, and he had all kinds of issues. And that, but it wasn't all bad. It wasn't all bad. And
That's nice to hear, though. I like that. It's kind of comforting, or you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. In our area, there was a lot of immigrants. There was a lot of people from Italy in the area. And I remember one young man coming in from Germany, and oh my God, he thought we were definitely rock stars because over in Germany, they just love Anishinaabe people, and they have all kinds of stuff. So it's like you couldn't be friendly enough in that. So yeah, it was good. Yeah, and high school was, there's alcohol by then. When my dad passed away, mom had a hard time. She had 5 kids at home, and I think they had 18 truck drivers working for them at that point. And
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty challenging. At the time as a kid, you go through a lot of hardships, but before everything went south, Mom took us to the airport when you actually could have dinner and look at the runway. And she had her stilettos on. She was a gorgeous Anishinaabe Kwe. Holy moly. And she had her cigarette and held in her 2 fingers and her martini in her other hand and crossed her legs just like the movies did in the 50s. And she pulled out of her purse, I think it was 10 $100 bills. And she looks at us and she says, well, kids, she says, this is it. This is all we have left. And she says, it's going to change now. It's going to be different. And I want you to remember how much I love you. And you have to make good choices and do the best that you can. Always go to school, no matter what. You get your education and never give up. And I think at that time I was probably 9, maybe 11, but not very old. And
Yeah.
and for the next several years, we watched her hit, oh my gosh, so many bottoms. And it was tough. And that we were in Toronto, and she had brothers and sisters there too. So we had some network around us. And but we moved right back to North Bay, where my grandparents were from. And then when I graduated high school, it was right off to Thunder Bay, and that heading back to the north, back to where we were out of the city and stuff. And it was good. It was really good. And that I remember sitting on the steps at Lakehead University. There was the Indian Control of Indian Education had just been passed in 74. And Anishinaabe people everywhere were standing up saying, enough is enough. Okay, the treaties were signed. They're not being respected. Residential schools have got to shut down. All kinds of things had to happen. And the only way to deal with it is through education. So Indian Control of Indian Education was written. And my older brother was in the very first Aboriginal teacher ed program created in Ontario, and that was over at McMaster, I think. And I was in the second one. The next year I started at Lakehead. And it was like, oh my God, I grew up in this city. I'm not on the res. I don't know if anybody's going to let me in. I don't know if I'm Indian enough, blah, blah, blah. A whole lot of doubts, because we weren't
Yeah,
based, we were
definitely.
city based. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, so I applied, and sure enough, in I went. Off they took me in, no problem, and uh, 2 years later, I graduate and got to organize the Indigenous. Canadian Indian Teachers Education Programs Conference. And that, so by this time, there were many, many across Canada, and everybody came to Thunder Bay, and that a lot of students. There was hundreds of us, and it was magnificent. And that's when I remember for the very first time offering an elder tobacco, and that's
Wow.
I know. I was like 22 and I didn't even know how to do that. It was like, oh my God, am I ever pitiful? And it was Willie Big George from Anishinaabeg of Nawagashing, which is the community I'm working for now.
Mm.
So life just is full of circles. So many circles. We go around and around, finding out things and doing things. And that, but yeah, life in Toronto was pretty cool. There was at one point we had an apartment right on Lake Ontario, and we looked across the lake, and Mom was telling us about the building of the CN Tower. And at that point, the Royal York Hotel was the tallest building in downtown Toronto. We could see the whole shoreline across the lake. And she would tell us how big it was going to get. And oh my God, I tell you, I was like 16 and my mother was as dumb as a bag of hammers. There's right? Because there's no way that a building would be built as tall as she was telling us. And she kept telling us how big it was going to be. And it's like, no way. And sure enough, she was right. That great big Hercules, I think it was, helicopter came one day and put the top of it on. Oh my gosh, just amazing stuff. And we got to see that across the lake, and going to High Park. They have a bit of a zoo there, and went there with the school one time, and there's buffalo there, and so kids is what we are. I'm calling the buffalo, and doesn't he come to the fence, eh? And then everybody's going, oh my God, how'd you do that? I said, well, I'm Anishinaabe, he knows who I am. That's why he's come to me. It's my buffalo. lots of good stories, eh?
Yeah.
And I never faced discrimination, not seriously, until Kenora.
Uh,
Yeah.
that is interesting because
Mm-hmm.
like I do understand that because like honestly like I'm only 20 years old. I haven't really experienced any discrimination towards myself either, like even when in Toronto. But what I've noticed in Toronto is that like I never really seen a lot of other Indigenous people. I know they're there. You
Yeah.
can hear stuff, you see stuff. But just with my school, and I didn't really do anything besides school. I just didn't really see anything, right?
Yeah.
But like you do hear stuff about that here,
Yes.
which is really interesting because of how heavily populated this area is with Indigenous people.
Right. I think it's also in our choices of where we happen to go, or where
Yeah.
where we're being, because it could have happened so easily. I remember being 16 and oh, I had such a crush on Randy. Oh my God, I'd do anything for that guy. And that so one day he asked me, he says, okay, he says, I want to take you out. I want you to stand on a corner here. I think it was Royal York and Lakeshore. He says, and eventually there's going to be a car is going to pull up, and I want you to get in the car and go with that person. He's going to give you money. Just do what it is that they ask. And I'm going, serious? Are you crazy? What are you talking about? You're my boyfriend. Why do you want me to put in a car with some strange guy? I really didn't understand what it was that he wanted me to do until much later, because I was quite naive as a young person. Actually, I think I still am. Anyways, but he wanted to prostitute me. He was ready to traffic me. And I was like, oh my God, really? And then at another point, I was walking down, I don't know, one of the streets, and I ran into my probation officer. I thought, oh, shoot. And he looks at me and he says, oh my God. He says, you look fine. I says, yeah. He says, what are you doing? I says, well, I went back to school. I think I'd gone back to grade 13 when we had it. And he says, so you're doing okay? He says, yeah. And he says, he says, when you were caught shoplifting at, I think it was 16, and got probation, I had to go see him, and it would just mortify me. And yeah, I was like, oh my God, how stupid am I? My girlfriend was 15. She got nothing. Her idea, I was dumb enough to go along with it. So it is my fault. I did choose. But he says, I was so sure you were going to be a prostitute. I thought, oh my God, seriously? And then the guidance counselor at high school, I guess that was the only discriminatory thing in school, um, wanted me to take the grade 10 2-year special program because I was Anishinaabe, and my mom was a full-blown alcoholic by that time. He said, you're going to last more than 2 years in school, so get your typing skills and you can be a secretary. I thought, oh, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I stayed in the academic um, uh, stream and graduated and went off to university and followed all the way up the chain. Yeah, yeah, interesting when you look back at life, and that. But it's always
Yeah, it definitely is.
I could have gone on the street, could have gotten a car with somebody, but it's like some little bells are going off in my head saying no,
Yeah.
don't do it. Yeah.
So for this next little section, I did reach out to some people just to ask if they had any questions in general. Not really towards you, but just I guess in general, but they did know that I was interviewing you,
Oh,
right?
okay.
But like it's not just like about Laura. It's just I guess it's more teachings related, I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
Um Now, just as a disclaimer for the people listening, before we go on about teachings vary. What Laura will say, what the teaching she's going to give, it's not going to be the only way to do things.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do it the
Yeah.
way she says it, doesn't mean you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
It varies from community, it varies from person to person. So that's always something to keep in mind when getting other teachings from people or just learning something about Indigenous culture in general.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question or something, it's not much of a question, was just about rattle teachings.
Mm-hmm.
They were more curious about if there was a difference between making one out of hide versus one out of like a turtle shell, or if there's not drum teachings like drum teachings where there's ceremonial ones
Mm-hmm.
and I guess you can say recreational ones. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess they're just curious about that kind of stuff.
Oh, good, good. I love your disclaimer. Um, I remember a point in my life when I absolutely knew the way the teaching was, and there was no other possibility. So I got put put into place. Pretty well. But
Yeah,
we can be full of ourselves. I tell you, our ego is one of the best things we can laugh about because we're so full
for real.
of ourselves. Yeah, so
Yeah, it's something that I deal with like working at Kanechu and as a tour guide, right?
Mhm.
Is people would ask me questions. I'm like, this is what I know.
Yeah.
But even just
Yeah.
talking amongst my other coworkers as we know different things. So it's always
Mhm.
something I eventually started telling people on tours is like, this is going to be different,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Okay. So with your question there, I go right back to the way that you use the word. One of my teachers said, "Oh, never call it a rattle. Babies use rattles. What you have is a shaker." Now,
Ah, yes, a shaker. That makes sense.
or
I
a
do remember you telling me this once actually.
yeah, or a shishiguan, and that shaker is is the most beautiful sound, and it takes us right back to creation story, right back to that very, very first sound in all of creation. Of course, when I'm listening to my teachers tell me this, I'm like, well, who is there listening to tell you this, eh? So that's when you never I never worry about asking questions anymore, and that although sometimes it's just within myself, I don't voice them because I don't want to be rude, um, but I love to ask questions. So I might put out my tobacco and ask for a dream or ask for someone to come to
Mm,
me understand.
I like questions.
Yeah, questions are good. So yeah, shakers, rattles, because the different nations call them different things. I love going down to Haudenosaunee territory, Mohawk, Tuscarora, Oneida, all those people, because they have such huge skills in gardening, agriculture. Their gourds, oh my gosh, or down in New
Wow.
Mexico, the gourd societies that they have, their ability to take these natural plants and dry them and fill them with seeds or maybe tiny stones or whatever it is that they might be using, wild rice, and then closing them again to make that natural sound. So those are beautiful, beautiful shakers. And up here with the hides that I'm working on, I'm sure I'll make some shakers out of that, the rawhide. And we, in creation story, before human was lowered, the creator asked creation, I want to put this one down, and that what will you do to help your younger brother, your younger sister? And one by one, different parts of creation responded, and the deer was one that responded and says, well, I'll give them my hide, and if they take me in a respectful manner and want to use me for goodness, I don't want to be used and tossed into the trash, right? I don't,
Yes.
and use me in a good way, eat me, um, use my hide for a drum, for clothing, for a shaker, for whatever it is that you might have, so that you can sing songs, because in the winds and in the waters you hear songs. And when we lift our voices with song, they tell us that in the spirit realm, which can be all in darkness, it is the voice of Anishinaabe, from what we know, that sparks light on the other side. And so sing so that light sparkles on the other side, little bursts of light all around. And on that way, it's another way that they know that Anishinaabe remembers who they are, remembers what their gifts are. So some of the songs are ceremonial, some of them are recreational, always in a good way. I would never want to hear uh, our shakers and rattles used for contemporary hip hop. Oh, no, I shouldn't say hip hop. Anything that is derogatory. I've been listening to some of the CDs and watching some of the videos that young people are watching. Oh my God, they're so offensive. It's like this is what people are supposed to be thinking is normal. It's like, oh my God, no wonder there's trafficking going on. No wonder there's and all the rest of it. You guys are being fed a real bad bill of goods. I tell you, life is not to be that way. Anyway, so yeah, so the hides, then the turtle shells, right? The turtle offered up his back not only to hold the earth that Muskrat brought up for the island itself, but also to be a vessel to hold the stones or the seeds, whatever, to make song. And there's other items that can be done too. I have one. It's made out of a baking powder can.
That's interesting.
Yeah, well, when tin cans came through in the what was it in the 20s, the 30s, I guess, when tin used to be made. Well, like we have aluminum now. Um, the old elders there at that point went, wow, look what we got here, and they started making shakers out of them. And
That makes sense. Why not be
yeah,
curious, right?
right, absolutely. It's like what's new today is going to be a tradition tomorrow.
It's like how making jingle dress jingles out of like skull cans or anything,
Yes, yes,
or
exactly.
like the lids.
Yeah, with the lids. And that one of the materials that could make that beautiful sound besides the bulrushes. Yeah. Oh, here comes another one.
Another chicken.
Oh, aren't they something? Eh? Anyway, so with the shakers, um, if people can remember that song is a way to voice, let your spirit come through in voice and song, to remember that originally one elder told me, says, I don't want kids making shakers because they're only to be used in the Medewan Lodge. And it's like, oh my gosh, so many kids don't get to go to the Medewan Lodge. So many kids don't
Yeah,
go to any lodge. To have no kids singing, how can that be right? So I would ask more and more people, elders, about how can I take that information and respect it in today's world. And
yeah,
yeah, and so I guess because it is, um, you got to be real specific with it, and then even birthing your shakery, they can go buy one, but and then it doesn't have a spirit unless you have ceremony for it and call a spirit to enter into it and then treat it in that way as a living being. But if you're making your own and you go out and you're walking along looking for that perfect piece of driftwood to be the handle or that perfect tree or the branch, of course, some people will go to the hardware store and find the perfect dowel.
yeah,
Right, and that and then go find the hide or the shell or whatever, and looking for all of those elements to bring it together, or working on a hide. Maybe you've made a drum and you've got some extra pieces from your drum kit, and you're going to soak it and shape it, and then you're thinking, well, maybe I want to make it in the shape of my clan, and um, I'll put it together in that way, and just doing things, and then you have a relationship, and that relationship is what brings that item from being something very physical to something spiritual and meaningful, and to be treated in a different way. So the individual, I guess, really needs to be thinking. But I wouldn't make a kit out of it. I wouldn't be handing it out because you don't know what people are doing. They're not getting a teaching. They're not recognizing the power of the creation story and connection to a shaker. Um, yeah, there's just so that we lose so much when we just give stuff away. And if we
yeah,
give it with good intent and good teachings, um, we're doing a serious disservice to the future generations of Anishinaabe people. And so be careful. And so I go back to that grandmother who said, no, don't do it. It's only in the lodge.
So to answer the question more directly, there isn't really anything different meanings in terms of material basis. It's just about what it's going to be used for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. And that makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But again, back to the disclaimer, like that's what we know, that's what we're being taught.
Yeah.
That's what you know, that's what you've been taught. Like you
Yeah.
might learn somewhere else that you might use turtle shells for a specific reason, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, some of the shells, my husband and I had been gifted a shell, and we tried making it into a shaker, and it just wasn't it, eh? We went to a sweat lodge with some people, and in that sweat lodge, the message came through that someone else needed a turtle shell for a shaker for a very specific reason. So we looked at each other and went, oh, we happen to have one. I wonder if it belongs. And so, sure enough, it did belong to that other person. So we gifted it. And in the last few years, that shell has become a very sacred item now. In fact, we feasted it on Saturday virtually just this past week as part of a bundle. And you really need to know all of the teachings for it. You just don't race into it and say, oh, I'm just going to make it for the fun of it.
Yeah.
No, sit down. It doesn't take long, like you and I talking right now. It doesn't take long to get a sense of what more you might do to receive the gift. And maybe a person's had a dream of it, and then they need to seek for help to help them get that dream image into this physical reality.
Yeah.
Cool, eh?
There wasn't one other question.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's not really a question in general. But someone else was just curious about, I guess, teachings about gender roles.
Mm-hmm.
Especially nowadays, there's a lot of people who are coming out as,
Yeah.
I don't know, anything related to the LGBT community or to spirited, right?
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and then it does get confusing because even growing up, women dance in certain regalias, women wear ribbon skirts, guys wear ribbon shirts, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you don't talk about or learn much about what it's like to be two spirited, at least
No.
not here or in my own experiences.
Yeah.
um so I guess this is also a learning experience for me.
Me
um
too.
so what do you have to say, or what do you know in terms of two
I
spirited
am
people?
I am so grateful to have you in my life, and I have three cousins who are in the LGBTQT um, spectrum. And anyway, so yeah, it's phenomenal to think how quieted we have been made um, from colonization. Two-spirited people and anywhere along the spectrum have been known forever. And you were part of our water ceremony just a few weeks ago when we made our raft offering down at our river. And
I was.
yeah, and I was, I've been thinking a lot about this because I actually got to speak about HIV stigma not long ago and had to do some real digging around to find out within myself, what do I know and who am I to say anything? And how much struggle are you facing, you as in the LBGQT? I know. I mean, it's phenomenal. Isn't that amazing? And so I'm working on another raft. So we make a raft, and there's a whole big teaching about that. But in the water offering, there is a raft, and on one side of the raft, the outer edge from where we connect all of the sticks together, it's painted red for the color earth, for female spirit, for all of that feminine energy, for the life that comes
Yes.
forward, the red strawberry, all of those things. On the other side is a blue strip. And in that blue, we're looking at the blue sky and the blue waters, the blueberries, but it is the male spirit that we're really focused on. So red spirit on one, or male on one, female on the other. And so I've been doing this for 25 years and not thinking much about the inside, which is not colored anything. The center part of the raft is left natural. And over this last little while, because of thinking like you are with the question, and I'm looking at this raft and I'm going, oh my God, look at that. There's 1 inch of red, 1 inch of blue, and like 5, 6 inches of all of the possibilities of what gender can bring forward to us. When I look outside and I see my two dogs humping and they're both male or whatever, thinking all of the possibilities are there. You look at some of the worms who are um, asexual, and it's like all of the possibilities are there. hearing creation story again, and you know that one of you had to go around and name everything, and he had to go and do it again because he didn't see everything the first time. He saw male and female, but he didn't see all of the possibilities of how life can express itself within the spectrum. And so we need to just relax and come to a better sense of possibilities. Gender is incredibly important for procreation. And so we do need to have our two sexes procreate. And that's one of the key directives that we've been given. In the Bible,
Yeah.
say, go forth and multiply. And I remember sitting with one of the most respected elders in Meday country and asking him, I says, I've got a gay student in the class here and really asking questions, and I don't know how to respond. And the basic answer was, all life is a gift. All life is a gift. You respect every form of life, every gender expression of how people are, because it could be physical, emotional, sexual, relational, all of the possibilities. He says, but the sad part is that gay couples are not blessed with children, and not biological children for both.
Yeah.
And I went, that's kind of sad. So I pondered that for a long time, eh? And because I see how many kids are abused in heterosexual relationships, and the incest, the sexual abuse, the beating, the lack of love, blah 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 blah. And then I look at some of my friends who are in same-sex relationships, and they have adopted or had, one of them has given birth, and they had in vitro, whatever. Anyway, and then they raise the child in love, in absolute, with boundaries and with open eyes and wonderment and looking at possibilities, and two loving beings. And it's like, man, gender roles. We really got to get a grip on making sure that every human being respects one another. And Annie Bebamachawabik, one of our elders from here who's gone on now, she said, you really have to watch, like just watch and listen, and find that sweet spot and do what you can so that you remember that your role in life is truly to walk in balance and harmony. It truly is to experience everything that we can in a good way, not at somebody else's, it not costing someone else harm. And that's so how you have grown here in the community is so amazing, and you have been so strong. But there are others from 20 years ago who had to leave the community because they were treated so badly, and died. And that's the same
Yeah.
community, right? And these are relatives, and it's like, holy man. And when we see death coming to people because of their gender roles, sexuality, whatever it is that they have. Because I don't have the vocabulary yet. I'm working on it, but as you can see, I stumble a lot. It really,
It's fine.
yeah, it really is. Just be the best that you can be, and try to be kind. But you have taught our community so much, Seth. Honest to God. You come out with your jingle dress, and then next year coming out with your fancy dress, and then next your traditional dress, and then you went, oh, the heck with this, and you came out with your grass
Yeah.
outfit, and nobody blinked an eyelash, right?
That was an experience. It's interesting because no one says anything to my face about it.
Are you
But
serious?
no one asks me anything. No one talks to me about it. I think
Oh,
people think that it's an offensive subject to ask. But I'm like, well, I'd rather you ask me than ask other people,
yeah, yeah. It is
right? But like
hard,
even my sisters get a lot of questions about it.
right?
Or even just like friends, families and everything like that. They always tell me, "Oh, this person is asking me about it." I'm like, "Well, what'd you say?" And they say this. I'm like, that's good enough. I was like, I mean, they would understand more if they just asked me.
It would be nice. Well, as you're maturing, it's getting easier because we're all getting a little smarter. A little,
Yeah.
yeah. And Netflix is really good. It helped a lot. There's a lot of documentaries and just films that just you go and you look at them and you go, oh my God, who would have thought such a simple thing would be so hurtful? Because on my end of it, it's like I don't think nothing about it, and on the other end, it's like sounds terrible, sounds
Yeah.
terrible, and
For a last question on this topic, I guess, is because like I've dealt with this myself and I still deal with it, is being someone who's two-spirited and someone who's transgender. Dealing with traditions can be confusing and difficult because
yeah,
growing up I would learn all the female teachings, right?
yeah,
And now it's kind of a mix of both.
yeah,
But I think for me, it's just learning everything I can and learning
yeah,
what I feel like I should be learning, right?
yeah,
And I think that's something that a lot of people are also going to struggle with, being two-spirited, because no one knows what two-spirited people should be taught. We
right.
don't know what our roles were in the community, right?
Right, right. Yeah, and I remember hearing once two-spirited people are closest to creator, and that not. But then again, it's like so much. So yeah, I like watching you and giving you the option every time. Come to full moon. You can be by the fire and learn the fire teachings, or you can put on your skirt and come in and work with the women. It's kind of like a grandmother in training, and that because
That's funny. I like that.
yeah, Kokum's got to know everything, right? Kokum's got to know
Yeah.
male, all of the female. We're the first teachers, and you ask men stuff, and they just don't have
Yeah.
full breadth.
Yeah.
So
True.
yeah, gathering up as much as you can, paying attention as much as you can, being as kind as you can, um, and sometimes it is also giving the other people um, a chance to learn without attacking us for being so stupid. Because we were raised with a lot of awareness. Well, actually, I think
Yes.
generation was a little bit better. I mean, it's yeah. Anyway, but then there's many people who are hotheads and fearful, and I think that's the biggest thing is there is what is there to be afraid of but fear.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I think that is a good place to end this interview, actually, since we're going on about 50 minutes. Which is that's a good length. That's a good length, I promise. It's a good length. It's a perfect length.
Good.
Um, so thank you, Laura. I appreciate you coming here. I learned a lot. I hope our listeners learned a lot. I hope you feel good about our interview too.
I do. I feel wonderful. Thanks for thinking of me and asking. And if there's anything I can do to help, just call.
For sure, I definitely will.
All right.
So yes, that is the end of our episode. Thank you everyone for watching. I'm just going to mention once again that this podcast series uploads every 2 weeks, so you can expect another episode in 2 weeks, every Sunday or Monday. It's either or. So yes, thank you again, Laura. Many meek witches, and I hope to talk again soon. I'm sure we will.